He said he'd take care of me till my last breath. But I didn't know that breath was the only thing he wanted to see leave me. You spend your whole life believing in goodness, in people. You tell yourself that if you keep your heart kind, kindness will find its way back to you. That's what I believed. I was wrong. My name's Beth. I'm 73 years old, and I've buried more than I care to count my husband Henry, my parents, most of my friends. The only thing I hadn't buried yet was hope. After Henry passed, the house got real quiet. The kind of quiet that don't just sit in the room, it sits in your soul. Mornings were the hardest. I'd pour 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then pour one down the sink. You start talking to walls just so you can hear a voice answer back. People from church would check in sometimes, bring a pie, say a prayer, then disappear back into their own lives. And I don't blame them. Grief makes people uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with silence. Then one Sunday after service, I met him, Charles. He was new to the congregation. Tall, salt and pepper hair, with that gentle kind of smile that makes you forget to guard yourself. Said he'd lost his wife a few years back. Said he knew what lonely felt like. At first, he just offered small kindnesses. Helped me carry groceries, fixed the squeaky porch step, walked me to my car when the sun went down. He didn't talk too much, just enough. The kind of man who looked you in the eye when he said your name. And Lord, it felt good to be seen again. We started having coffee after service. He'd bring donuts, said no woman should eat breakfast alone. We'd talk about faith, about missing our spouses, about how strange it is to grow old in a world that don't see you anymore. He told me, "You got such a good heart, Beth. Someone ought to take care of you." I laughed, said, "Well, I've been taking care of myself just fine for 70 years. He smiled back and said, "Maybe it's time you let someone else try." That sentence stuck with me. Nobody'd said something that kind to me in years. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment my guard started to fall. A woman can survive loneliness. But kindness, that's what makes her vulnerable. Weeks passed, and suddenly it was we instead of me. He'd drive me to appointments, pick up my prescriptions, hold my hand when my knees hurt too bad to climb the porch. Neighbors started saying, "Beth, it's so nice to see you smiling again." And it truly was. I thought maybe this was God's way of giving me one more reason to wake up in the morning. But sometimes, the devil don't knock. He walks right in with a Bible under his arm and a smile that feels like safety. He promised to care for me till the end. I believed him. I let him into my house, into my heart. And in doing that, I opened the door to my own betrayal. I thought I'd found love again. I just didn't know. I'd invited my thief. They say the devil don't come dressed in horns and fire. Sometimes he wears kindness and smells like fresh coffee. After Charles came into my life, the days started to feel lighter. He'd show up every morning, just as the sun crept through the curtains, hold in 2 cups of coffee and that same easy smile. Said he couldn't start his day right without hearing my voice. We'd sit on the porch, me in Henry's old chair, Charles and the one he fixed for me, and talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes he'd read from the newspaper. Sometimes he'd just hum a gospel tune under his breath. I remember thinking, Lord, maybe this is my second chance. After all those years alone, it felt like someone finally saw me again, not as a burden, not as a widow, just Beth. He had a way with words, always gentle, never rushed. He'd say, "You've worked hard all your life, Beth. It's time somebody looked after you." And the way he said it, you wanted to believe him. I'd smile and say, "Charles, I'm fine taking care of myself." He'd laugh, shake his head, and say, "Maybe, but even the strongest garden still needs water." We started spending Sundays together after church. He'd drive me out past the river, to a little diner that made the best peach cobbler. We'd sit by the window, holding hands like 2 teenagers with all the time in the world. I caught folks looking sometimes, probably whispering, Would you look at that? Miss Beth Dunn found love again. And I didn't mind it. Felt good to be seen, happy. Then he started helping more around the house. Fixed the leaky sink, repainted the shutters. Even brought over a new rug for the living room. Every time I thanked him, he'd wave it off, say, "Family don't keep score." That word, family, it warmed me right through. I hadn't heard it said with love in a long time. When bills came in, he'd pick them up without asking. Said, "You just rest, Beth, I'll handle all that paper mess." At first, I resisted. Told him, "I'm not helpless, you know?" He'd smile that same soft smile and say, "I know you ain't helpless, but let me feel needed for once." And, Lord, help me. That line worked every time. You see, when you've lived long enough, loneliness don't knock loud, it just sits beside you. So when someone comes along and offers to share the quiet, you open the door wide. I thought I was letting love in. Turns out, I was letting him take a look around. It started small, a question here, a suggestion there. He'd ask, "You still keep Henry's insurance policy?" Or, "You ever think about updating your will? Just in case." Said it like he was looking out for me. I thought he was just being practical. But now I know. He was laying bricks for his own foundation. I didn't see the signs then. I only saw the man who made me laugh again. The man who said grace before dinner and held my hand in prayer. I didn't see the shadow behind the smile. It don't happen all at once. Evil's patient. It don't knock your door down, it just cracks it open a little wider every day. Till one morning you wake up and realize the whole house is gone. Charles started changing little by little. First, it was the voice. That soft, honeyed tone that once sounded like comfort started carrying an edge. He'd sigh when I asked small questions. Frown when I wanted to handle my own bills. Said things like, "You worry too much, Beth." I said, "I'll take care of it." And I'd nod, 'cause I didn't want no argument. I thought maybe I was just being stubborn. One afternoon, I went looking for Henry's watch, the one he gave me the day we married. Couldn't find it. I checked every drawer, every box. When I asked Charles about it, he barely looked up from his paper. Said, "You probably misplaced it, but Henry's watch wasn't something I'd misplace." That piece held my whole past in its titchkeen. A week later, I noticed a few checks gone from my checkbook. I asked him again, real gentle. And he said, "Eth, you're gettin' forgetful. I paid some bills for you, you should be thanking me, The way he said it. Not with love, but with power. That was the first time I felt afraid of him. He started keeping my mail in a folder. He said he'd organize. When I reached for it, he moved it out of my hand. "You just confuse yourself." He said. Confuse myself. I'd been paying bills and running that house long before he ever showed up. One night, I woke up thirsty and went to the kitchen. Found him whispering on the phone, lights off, papers spread across the table. When he saw me, he froze. Said he was helping a friend with a loan. But when I looked closer, those papers had my name on them. That next morning, I asked him what he was doing. He slammed his coffee cup down so hard it cracked the saucer. Yelled, "Ve done everything for you, and you still don't trust me." I just sat there quiet. That's the thing about fear, it don't always make you run. Sometimes, it roots you right where you stand. A few days later, the bank called. The voice on the other end said, "Mrs. Brown, we just want to confirm the withdrawal. Greater than." I told her I hadn't made one. She said, "Your husband did." My husband? I hadn't had one in 20 years. My knees gave out right there. I hung up the phone and sat on the floor, staring at that empty checkbook, realizing I'd been robbed by the man who said he loved me. When he came home that evening, I asked him to leave. He didn't shout this time. He just looked at me with that same calm smile he wore the first day I met him and said, "You wouldn't survive without me." Then he walked out. Greater than, talk in my peace, my savings, and every soft piece of me that still believed in love. That night, I sat in the dark with just the sound of the fridge hummin'. My hands were shaken, my heart hollow. I didn't cry. I just whispered, what lesson are you teaching me now? And somewhere in that quiet, I heard my answer. Even good hearts need boundaries. He stole my money, but the Lord didn't let him steal my will to live. I was hurt. But I wasn't done. That's when I decided, if I could survive love's lie, I could survive anything. When you've been broken like that, it don't just hurt, it hollows you out. You wake up wondering how the world can still look the same when you feel so different inside. The same porch, the same sky, but a silence that feels heavier than any sound. For 3 days after he left, I didn't open my curtains. I couldn't. The light felt too honest. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the chair he used to sit in, asking myself how I didn't see it coming. I replayed every smile, every touch, every "I'll take care of you," trying to find the lie. But the truth is, the lie wasn't in his words, it was in my hope. On the 4th day, there was a knock at my door. It was Clara, sweet, steady Clara, the nurse from the clinic down the street. She'd been checking on me ever since my last hospital stay. She took one look at me, eyes red, hair undone, and didn't ask a single question. Just walked in, set down a bag of groceries, and said, "You look like you need something warm and quiet." She made me soup, cleaned my dishes, and hummed an old hymn I hadn't heard since I was a girl. I told her what happened, every detail. She listened without interest, her hands still staring the pot, her eyes full of that kind of care you can't buy. When I finished, I said, took almost everything. Clara, She looked at me and said, not everything. He didn't take you. Greater than. That's when I decided I wasn't gonna be nobody's victim. I'd been a wife, a mother, a caretaker all my life. I knew how to rebuild. Greater than, maybe this time, I'd rebuild me. The next morning, I went to the bank. My hands trembled, signing those papers, but my voice didn't. I told the manager what happened, showed him every withdrawal, every forged signature. Greater than, he frowned and said, single quotes, Mrs. Brown, will investigate this immediately, I just nodded. I wasn't looking for pity. I wanted justice. The officer who came to take my statement said, Charles had other victims, women just like me, lonely, kind, trusting. That hit me hard, 'cause I realized I wasn't alone in this kind of pain. And somehow, that made it a little easier to breathe. Clara started cumin by every evening after work. She'd bring flowers from the hospital garden, saying, Miss Beth. These ones made it through the storm, figured you might relate, We'd sit together, sippin' tea, talking about forgiveness and faith. I told her I didn't know if I could ever trust again. She said, you don't have to trust people, ma'am. Just trust that God still got you. Every day after that, I opened the curtains a little wider. Started walking again, watering my plants, smiling at neighbors. The world didn't feel heavy anymore, it felt honest. Painful, but honest. They say strength is loud, but it ain't. Strength is sitting in your kitchen after losing everything and whispering, thank you, Lord, for one more chance. Greater than. Strength is choosing to forgive even when nobody apologized. He took my money, but he didn't take my mercy. He broke my trust, but not my faith. And I promised myself that day, the next man who comes into my life will have to meet my Savior first. When you stand back up after being used, that ain't pride, that's resurrection. It's funny how life works. The same hands that once trembled with fear can one day fold in peace. The same eyes that cried can look up and smile again. Greater than. That's how I knew the storm was over. It took months for the bank to finish their investigation. They called one afternoon, said they found Charles. Turns out, I wasn't the first, and I sure wasn't the last. There were 3 other women, all older, all alone, all left with empty accounts and broken hearts. When they told me he'd been arrested, I didn't celebrate. I didn't dance or shout or thank God that he'd finally got what was human. I just sat on my porch, looking at the sky, and whispered *, I leave him to you, *, 'cause forgiveness ain't for the ones who hurt you. It's for the one who survived it. A few days later, I got a letter from him, written from jail. He said *, I never meant to hurt you. I was just trying to survive. Greater than. I read it once, then folded it up and set it under my Bible. Didn't write back. Greater than. What could I say? Sometimes silence speaks louder than any sermon. Clara came by that night. She found me sitting on the porch with the letter beside me. I told her *s pain, his price now. She said, so are you, but yours is turning into peace. And she was right. My peace was slow, quiet, honest, the kind that don't need proof or apology. I started helping out at the church again. Cooking for the Sunday dinners. Teaching the young girls how to stretch $1 and guard their hearts. Greater than. They called me Mama Beth. And for the first time in a long while, I felt useful again, not because someone needed my money, but because they needed my wisdom. One day after service, a young woman hugged me and said, I almost gave my whole savings to a man who said he loved me. But your story saved me. I cried that day, not 'cause I was sad, but because my pain had finally found its purpose. You see, Charles took a lot from me, my trust, my savings, my sense of safety, but he didn't take my soul. And he couldn't take my lesson. The lesson is this: love without truth is a trick, and faith without wisdom is blindness. But when you mix truth with faith, that's when you find peace. So no, I don't hate him. I pray for him sometimes, not because he deserves it, but because I do. Forgiving him set me free. I stopped waiting for someone to care for me and started learning how to care for myself again. He promised to care for me, but he only wanted my money. What he didn't know is that God already gave me something he could never touch: peace,